For those of you who've never used it before, this is just for you to get a taste of what it looks like, how it works, because it's very likely that you'll be using either this or ArchiCAD, which is very similar, in your professional lives if you do want to become an architect. It is one of the most widely used software. So let's see if I'm just going to put that on my, okay, great. Oh, spoilers. Okay, cool. So guys, this is, we're going to get started. This is Revit. This is what it looks like. Okay, cool, that's still going. And just remember guys, if you're just joining us, to sign in. I'll be reminding everyone a few times, so don't worry. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. This is my BIM project from last year, and so I'm going to be using this and another project as an exemplar okay, that's a different project, for my demonstrations today. So I'm just going to be quickly sharing with you all the different buttons and placements of stuff in Revit, so anyone who hasn't seen it before knows what they're looking at. So there's a bunch of just like quick options up here, so like the undo, redo, save, etc. And then really all of the different buttons that you need to be able to do anything is all up here in these different tabs. So with architecture, it's anything that you could build, for example, a wall, door, window, components, which I'll go through later, roofs, floors, stairs. So for example, if I click on a wall, then you can choose different types. You can see a list comes down. And then you can start drawing and start building, and you can customize different walls. When you go to structure, this is more for like steel work, so beams, floors, trusses, all those sorts of things. You'll never really use these. And then steel, again, it's specific for steel, the way that those types of connections work. Systems, for example, ducts, so air ducts, plumbing. When architects put together sheets, they need to have all of this documentation in place. So this is all special, like you can have separate lines running through your building, etc. You'll never really use these three. Insert, you might use a bit, so to insert an image, for example, or a family, you're able to link different projects. I'll explain that a little bit later. You may use this. And then annotate is the big one. So you'll be using a lot of annotations. So for example, all of these running dimensions, all of these texts, all of these tags, these are all types of annotations. So whenever you do a drawing, you need to include different types of information. So that's there. Analyze, you'll never really use, but it's like loads, structural stuff, heating and cooling. Revit has its own, energy models. So that's really interesting, but there are other programs that do that too. Massing and site, so for your top of surfaces and masses. Collaborate's really cool. So you'll probably never use Collaborate in Revit unless you work professionally. And what it does is it allows teams of people to be working on the same file, the same project simultaneously at the same time. So how does that actually work though? So what happens is you'll have a central file on a central server. And when you work on it, it'll download a copy of the file locally onto your computer. And then you have to request bits of the model to be able to edit them and change them. And you need to get permission from other users. So a little pop-up will come up in the corner. It'll say, this user's requesting to be able to edit this room or this area. Give them permission. And then this save button, this here is a sync button. It's grayed out. So that's synchronized. So you will then sync your changes. Everyone's will update and you can continue working. So you can have, the plumbing, someone doing the plumbing, someone doing the doors, someone doing, the garden. It's great. But that's mainly for like really big projects, like huge apartments and stuff. So you'll never really get it on something like this kind of scale. View, you'll use a lot. So this is where you can make your new sheets, all your sections and elevations and 3D views and then rendering. Manage, there's just a couple of settings in here that you might use. We'll go through this a little bit later. But really, you don't really use a lot of these. Add-ins, you don't really use. This is a Lumion plugin. We're not going to go over that today, but just know that it's there and you can download it, Lumion Live Sync, for those of you who know what Lumion is. And modify, this pops up every time you click on something. And there's a bunch of shortcuts here that I use all the time, which we'll go over later. Then, lastly, this is the properties panel. So whenever you click on something, it'll give you the properties. So for example, I clicked on this wall and it tells me that it's going from level 1 to level 2. It's this type of wall. It has this structure. It's, you know, this length and area. You can click on anything. So this is a family here. It tells me what it is. Here's some stairs. So if you click on something, properties will come up there. And then lastly, this here in the corner here is your project browser. So this is where all of your different views and sheets are. So the way that Revit works is that you have views, which is what you build on, and then in the end, you need to put them on sheets so you can show them to clients. So when we go to our views, you see here views, and they get split up into different types of views. So you have your floor plans, your elevations, your sections. So you can see here, this is level 1, this is, excuse me, level 2, level 3, etc., etc. And so the view range is only within that level. And when you build a wall in this level, it'll only be built in this level. So you build typically in your plans, and then you can see here, these are some elevations. There you go. And you can see here all the different levels. So you can set these all up before, and you can move these up and down and change your spacings. And so RLs, you can see it has an RL. So the reason that doesn't start at 0 is because this is the height in the world, like above sea level, that starts at. So that's typically how architects work with levels. And then sections, and as you can see, we've done some annotations and stuff on this particular section. I'll show you how we get to this a little bit later. And you can see that every time I click on a view or a sheet, it comes up here as a tab. So in order to navigate between all of your different ones, you can, you know, switch between them quickly here, or you can use them down here. Now, I have 2 different files open at the moment. You can have multiple files open. The one thing I don't like about Revit is that it doesn't differentiate between your files. So it looks like all the same tabs, but that's okay. All right. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing I want to show you is making sure that your Northpoint is set properly in Revit. And this is going to help with, I'm going to show you a shadow study a bit later too, because this is quite cool. I've done this quite a lot, and I really like this. But if you just click anywhere on your view in the properties panel, there's this little thing called orientation here. And it should have been on Project North to begin with, but this is called Project North. So basically, when you build a building, you want everything to be nice and parallel, because you don't want to draw walls at weird angles. But do you see this north arrow? So this is given from the survey data. This is actually the direction of north. So when we go to true north, we want to be able to make sure that this is orientated correctly. So what we do is we go to manage, we go to position, and rotate true north. And what we can do is, do you see how this has popped up? It allows you to rotate it the way we need to, but we're going to click place. And what you do is, it always has north pointing up. So we're going to click that, and we're going to rotate till it snaps. So it's snapped to up. That's 86.3 degrees. And, oh, it's disappeared. So a good trick is you can right click and zoom to fit. There we go. And this is our crop extent. I'll go over that a little bit later. But there you go. You can see how it's rotated the whole site. Now, obviously, if we wanted to edit stuff and draw stuff, this angle is going to be very hard to draw angles at. So that's why if we go back to Project North, it's rotated back to this orientation. So this is our working orientation, and then this is our true orientation, if that makes sense. Now that's one of the first things that you want to do when you set up a new Revit file. That's very important. And the reason why is for doing shadow studies. I love doing shadow studies in Revit because like even if I'm building something in Rhino, I've made some masses, I'll bring them into Revit to do my shadow study because they do a great job at showing all of that. So up here is a great button that I love to use called 3D View. And there's our whole site. And you can see we've got a lot of masses around, and these are all going to cast shadows. Now, I don't want to see these because I want to see my building. I don't really care about these. So I'm just going to highlight all of these. Now, if you click on something and you want to add something to the selection, you click Control. Revit is the only program where they switch that Shift and Control. I hate it so much. It's when you're swapping programs. Oops, Shift, I don't want to include that, so I click Shift and I minus that. I'm just going to right click, hide and view elements. So a lot of the time in Revit, Now see how, where did I go? See, this one out of that view now. See how it's not really selecting that roof? I can click tab, and when I click tab, it swaps between what it selects. So tab, control, and I'm going to hide those again. So I'm just hiding that just so I can see that. And so in this particular view, which is this one over here, this 3D view, I've hidden those. So if I go to another view, for example, level 1, they're still going to be there. It hasn't taken it out of that view. It's only this view. Anyway, have a look at these buttons down here. They're really cool. There are a lot of shortcuts. So we can change the style. So you see there's wireframe, there's hidden line, shaded, which is what we were on, consistent colors, and then realistic, another way of shading it. And then ray traces, I'm not going to do that now because it's too slow, but I'm going to go to hidden line for now, so it's a bit monochromatic, and that's a great way to do your shadows in. Now, in order to rotate around this 3D view, I'm holding down the middle button, the scroll button in my mouse, and when I want to rotate, I hold down Shift. So I'm holding Shift, and now I've let go of Shift, and I can pan, holding down that scroll wheel button. It also has this little navigation thing at the top, which I really like, so that's great if you want to get like an axo view or a top-down view really easily, but I like this little axo view over here. And so now what we're going to do is this button down here is we're going to turn shadows on. And look at that, you can instantly see all of those shadows. They do them really, really well. But we want to do shadow studies, so obviously we need, winter and summer, 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., right? And we want to make separate views so we can put them all on a sheet together. We can see all the different changes on one sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this view. So it makes a copy of the view. And I'm going to rename it as winter 9 a.m. Okay. And if we go to manage, additional settings, sun settings, and those popped up on my screen for some reason, there. So we can do a solar study. Now it has a few presets, but you can put it in manually too. So I've just chosen the location here. It has a city list. You can also put in a mapping service, but default city list for Australia, that'll be good enough, and use daylight savings time. And so now I'm going to put in the date. So we're going to start with winter. So that's June 22nd. And then the time. So let's put in 9 a.m. Now always make sure your ground plane is at the correct level, because if you have it higher up, then it won't cast shadows to the correct level. I'm going to click apply. And look at that. So remember our north, right? So if we look at our north is like that way. So then in the mornings, it's going to cast a big shadow. I went to the wrong one. Here you go, winter 9 a.m. It's going to cast a big shadow from that cliff, but that's okay. You can see there's just a bit of sun over there. So let's duplicate this view, and we're going to change the time to, whoops, there we go, 12 p.m. Apply. Look at that. It's changed the shadow. And we're going to rename this to winter 12 p.m. And we'll just do one more. Duplicate view. We'll rename that to be winter 3 p.m. Go back to our settings. And we're going to change that to 3 p.m. So awesome. So have a look. We've got 3 different views here on the left. And you can see that in each view, when we change the sun setting, it only does it for that view. So all the other views aren't affected. So you can make all these views. Fantastic. So now what we want to do is put them all onto one sheet so that we can see them all together. So we're going to do down here, just going to delete that because I want to show you how to do it from scratch. So you can see here we have all of our sheets, and this is the thing with the title block, and you can custom make a title block. If you're doing BIM, there'll be a video to show you how to do that. But essentially we're going to go to view, we're going to add a new sheet. Now, the great thing about Revit is that when you make a new sheet, it'll automatically keep your numbering system intact. We can rename that, and we're going to call it, whoops, shadow study. And then if we want to get all of our views, our shadows on here, it's really as simple as just dragging it over like that. Now, if you can see, this is our box. It's a little bit big. We want to make it smaller. How do we do that? So there's this thing, instead of clicking back on here, we can double click this, and that's called activating a view. So it's as if you're in your editing mode again. And down here, we're going to change our scale. Now 1 to 500, that's a little small. 1 to 200, still a little big. You can always do a custom scale. So let's do 1 to 350. A little bit strange, but that's okay. You click on this to bring this title all the way in. We can drag it in. Awesome. But as you can see like the typography edges there, and we don't really want to see that. So again, you double click, you've activated your view, and these two buttons down here, this crop view and show crop region. I don't know if you guys can see that, are really important buttons. So if we click that on, you can see how boxes appeared around here. So now we can drag these in and we can hide everything we don't want to see. So we just care about our site really, can crop that. And it's your choice if you want to keep the box on or not, but I tend to turn that off. If you see this other one, that's uncropped and cropped. So we want to keep it cropped. Double click off it, and we're back into our sheet view, and we can just drag this up. And that's really cool over there. So let's do the same for 12 p.m. We want to bring it in. It's too big. Let's change the view to our custom view, 1 and 350. And then we can change our crop region. But as you can see, maybe you want to lay this out really neatly, but it's kind of hard to drag your crop region to be exactly the same for every single one. So what I would recommend you do, you can see how it's hard to kind of get it exactly the same, right? So you can lay this out nicely. What I'd recommend doing is you delete these two. We've got our winter 9 a.m. We've made our crop region. And if you duplicate it after you've already done one, then look at that. It already starts with that crop region in place. So we can go back to our sun settings, change it to 12 p.m. And then when we put it on our sheet, shadow study there, we go up to, meant to rename it, but that's okay. And you can see, look, there's already a blue line, so it knows we want to align. And that's nice and neat, and they'll all be the same. So you can have all 6. You can have winter and summer. I love doing shadow studies in Revit. It has a great look. You can see that they're very clear shadows. Versus sometimes when you're in Rhino, there's a lot of, it's a bit blurry, the shadows, but that's okay. All right, I'm going to go on to something else now. If anyone has any questions, please, Grasshopper tutorial when? Oh, good question. We haven't planned a Grasshopper tutorial for this term, but we are expanding into other programs in future terms. So look out for that. That's definitely a possibility. Oh, okay, Ivy answered that in the chat. Okay, fantastic. If anyone has any questions at all, if I'm going too fast, if you can't hear, please feel free to just type it into the workshop discussion. And I will happily go over anything for you guys. Shadow studies are awesome, Revit, if you guys haven't done it before. Okay, so next what I want to go on to, it's just showing you one thing with scale and how scaling works in Revit. So here's a drawing. Maybe could we get some ideas on how to draw the basics like windows and walls? Yes, I will be getting to that in a moment. I'll show you some of those. But I wanted to show you something first quickly. So you can see here I have a drawing of a house. It's at 1 to 50 scale, and I have my grids, and I have my running dimensions, and I have my text. And it's a bit small on this sheet if you have a look, because this sheet is A0. So if we zoom in, if you click on it, you can see up here in the top left corner, A0 metric. So it's meant to be a big sheet. A bit lame to go through the modeling part. Hi, Never Krong. We haven't gone through modeling per se. With this stream, I'm going to be showing more about tips and tricks as well as the basic modeling. But yeah, we will do a little bit of that in a moment. So yeah, one thing I want you guys to be careful of, if we go back to this with our scaling, if we change our scale, say, to 1 in 100, so look what happens with the text. It's changed size automatically. What if we go to 1 in 200? Again, look at all of that. So basically what happens is with line weights and text and annotations, it scales for the size of the... Oh, is audio not working? It seems like I've still got my green thing, so it seems like audio is still working. Just a thumbs up or down, guys, if it's still working. But as you can see, it scales for the size of the page. It doesn't necessarily scale for the size of the drawing. So my one recommendation is, if you're ever, setting up sheets and everything, set up the size of your sheets first, and place your drawings before you start your annotations, because you want to make sure that you're choosing the correct. See, this size, 2 millimeters, it hasn't changed. Even if we go back to 150, it's still 2 millimeters, right? But it's changed the scale based on the size of the page and the scale that you're working at. Because typically, this drawing would not fit on an A0 or an A3 page at 1 to 50. It would only fit at A0 1 to 50, so it scales proportionally. So yeah, just make sure whenever you're setting up, set up all your sheets here. So add your sheets, name them, make them an A3 if you need it for an A3 document. You can change all of that. But yeah, so that's just stuff to be careful about. Cool. Now, I wanted to go over a couple of basic modeling that you guys were asking about in terms of walls, stuff like that. So yeah, you go to architecture, you have all of your basic things here. And when you click on wall, you can see that there are a whole bunch of types that you can choose from. Now, what's great is you can take any of these and you can also make custom walls. You can make custom floors, custom roofs, everything. So, for example, I may want a brick veneer wall, but if I want it to be slightly different for 250, maybe I want it 300, edit the type, and this box comes up. And I want to make a new type, so I'm going to duplicate it, call it brick veneer 300. Okay, now I've duplicated it. So this one that already exists, I'm not going to override, I'm going to make a new one. And you can click edit, and look at this, it has all these different layers, and it tells you exactly how thick it all is. So yeah, we're going to maybe make this, oh Lord, I haven't done my maths properly, but we need to add an extra 50. So make that 160. Whoops. Something like that. So this will be a 300 wall. Now what we can do is, before we start drawing, we want to make sure that these parameters are correct. So base constraint, level 1, top constraint, say that we only want it to go to level 2, we can say up to level 2, and it'll lock it within those. If you saw those levels from before, we can click apply. And now I'm just going to start drawing anywhere randomly, but there we go. And we can just continue drawing. Now, one thing to be careful about here is, before you start drawing, have a look at this setting over here, finish face. So the line that you're drawing is the exterior face. So have a look there. You can see that that line is exterior. If I press the space bar, I can flip. So now my exterior is going to be on the left side versus my exterior of the building going to be on the right side. So that's something that you guys should always check before. So I'm going to redo this, obviously. You can also change it so that you've got it in your core or your center line, because if you have grids, right, maybe you want to base them off the centers of your walls, not the outside of your walls. So let's go by the core maybe. And we've got, as you can see, Revit loves to align everything. So as I go up, it'll have dots. and it'll want me to align everything, and there you go, we've got a chain of walls. If we hit our 3D view, we go around, let's just delete that tree. We don't need trees. Who needs trees? Got these walls. Now, if you want to change any of their properties afterwards, you always can. So, for example, if we want that to go up to level 3, you can hit apply. Look at that. Now our wall goes all the way up to level 3. However, my recommendation is, if you're ever working on a normal project or something, probably have your walls like this, where you've got a new wall for each level. It makes things a lot easier in terms of your drawing. Sometimes it might not cut properly. Revit sometimes has a lot of weird things. So yeah, I would recommend doing this. Probably the exception where you don't want that to happen is where maybe you've got a window that goes over multiple levels if you have a void. This is different because this is a curtain wall system. I won't be going over that today. But yeah, probably always best to keep your wall separated like that. So we're going to go to here, and we're going to just press Ctrl Z and undo that. Now let's go back to level 1. We want to add a roof. This is just a little shed that we're building. So there's plenty of different ways that you can build a roof. One type is by footprint. That's fine. Yes, we want to do it level 2. That's correct. So it already knew that I was building on the wrong level. It probably didn't want a roof on level 1. So we want to go to level 2, and it's disappeared. It into fit. Now, as you can see, we can't see our building there. The reason for that is because the cut level is always like a meter above the floor level. So because our walls only got to the base of level 2, we're not going to be able to see our building. So when we're drawing our roofs, even though we're drawing it in this level, we'll be able to move it up later. But essentially, we can make sure we define the slope. So we're going to draw the footprint of our roof. And as you can see, it has these little angles over here. And we can see that's going to be 30, that's going to be 30. So it'll automatically make this roof into that kind of shape. Now, there's a few things that you can specify. All these different cuts. So it changes like the eaves. If you go to edit the footprint, if we say that this is going to be 0 and this is going to be 0, what do you guys think will happen if only these two sides actually have an angle to them? We'll have a look. Whoops. What's happened? Oh, I think I deleted my roof. Sorry, guys. Let's go back. Oh, no. This is not meant to happen. I've bricked my own file. I don't know what's going on. I think my computer is just having a bit of a meltdown at the moment. Let's close. Oh, there we go. Okay. Something weird happened, but that's okay. 0, 0. Let's see if that'll... No, the same thing has happened. That's very strange. All right, well, never mind that, guys. It had a bit of a freak out. Revit sometimes. Nothing's ever perfect, guys. But yeah, that's the thing that you can do with roofs. Essentially, the way that these roofs here were made, if you have a look at the edit footprints, so we have, there's a specific slope, and that's 0, and that's 0, and there's just, so only the two sides have a slope, the others don't have a slope. So therefore, it'll create that shape. Now, one thing which is really important is obviously you want your walls to go all the way up to your roof, and you can see that there's a big hole here. And that's probably not good. We don't want a hole. So one thing which is really important is to make sure walls and roofs and floors are all joined properly. So one thing which is really cool that you can do is you can draw your wall, and then you click attach top to base, and you choose your roof, and boom, it automatically fills in and attaches it to the top of that base. So it's almost like a trim in a way. You can cut that off over there. I've got another example, whoops, over here, where you can see I'll put on a different mode so you can see better. I've got a brick wall over here and a concrete floor. And I don't know if you guys can see, but it's kind of, they're intersecting in one another, which is not correct. There should be like a cutout in the wall for the slab to sit on. So one thing we can do is go to the Modify tab and use the Join tool. And we're going to join that to the wall. And as you can see, once we've joined it, it's created that cutout correctly. So that's one thing that you guys got to make sure to do whenever you have a floor slab. If we go to level 2, and you can see that we've highlighted it in one view, so it stays highlighted in another, and we can edit the boundary. We've drawn that, where it's meant to be sitting in terms of its construction. So that inner layer of the wall is the structural layer of the wall. So obviously your floor slab, because often you've got to make sure to join it properly. And then again, it checks if you want everything to be attached. So you click yes. But that's okay. Don't worry about that. So really the basics of Revit, it's really easy to just draw walls, draw doors. If we go back to our little shed over here, we can see doors. Revit always gives you regular updates to save, so it's great. We can choose from a variety of different doors. We can add one in over there. There you go. Or if we have a window, all these different types of windows. And I'll show you how you can get lots of different types of windows and doors momentarily. But if we go back to our 3D mode, you can see that we've built, our door there and our window there. And obviously I've forgotten to build a floor slab, but you guys will do that too. So if you're doing the BIM course, you'll know about pads. This is a pad here. This is our topo surface. But unfortunately, I just can't show you everything today. There's a couple more things I just want to quickly show you before I finish off. Guys, if you have any questions, any other specific things that you want to see, please put them in the chat. Let me know if everything's working. And make sure if anyone's joined in late, just to sign in on our sign-in chat. It's not too late to bring your friends in, guys. We've still got a little while left. What I wanted to show you guys was a bit of abstract modeling and other walls and stuff that you can do, and also families. So if you see all of this furniture here, this person here, this chair here, this rail here, these are all called families. So what you're able to do is download families and items and types of walls and stuff, and use them in your project. So I've got a few websites open here that are great. Write these down, everybody. BIM Objects, National BIM Library, and Revit City. These are 3 that I'd recommend, and you can get great objects downloaded. So, for example, this couch, there's a few standard stuff in Revit, but like this whole thing, this whole group, that was a kitchen that I found online, all of that, and I just downloaded all of that. Let's see, are there any other examples? I think this dining set I probably got online. Yeah, this model kitchen set I definitely got online. TV comes in Revit. These couches come in Revit. But so families are things you place. If you want to place them, you go Component, place a component. And if you want to choose a specific, if you entered it before, it'll come up here. But if you want to choose a new one, you go Load Family. And then it'll bring up this window. And now either you go to wherever you've saved it, or Revit has some stuff built in already. So, for example, furniture. We've got all our furniture here, chairs, benches, etc. But families is not just furniture and objects. It also includes all of these different things. So for example, title blocks. You can make custom title block families. Or, you've got pipes and walls and casework. So casework is like cabinets and stuff. So these are all great, and you can, let's open that one up and put it in. So, for example, sometimes a family can be made where it has a specificity to only be attached to walls. So, for example, this cabinet here, we can place there. Let's see if that's worked. We can go to our 3D view. Oh, look, there's our cabinet. That's fantastic. But I want to show you, sometimes you can make your own families and your own custom furniture, and instance parameters are something very cool that you can do. So we're going to file new family, and for example, we're going to make some casework. So I did quite a lot of this when I was doing that renovation I mentioned earlier. So you have these kinds of tools up here, and these are great for modeling in Revit. So for example, we'll make an extrusion, and it gives you, these are just dimensions. Obviously you can change all of these, but just for the sake of doing something quickly, we'll do that. Now, if we go to our front, you can see it's set up this automatically. But what if I want to do a cabinet, right? So let's delete that. I'm just going to move this out the way. Now, I'm going to copy. This is just a reference line. It's like a guide or a grid, so you won't see it, but it helps you design stuff. So typically cabinets start at 1800, and then they'll go to the top of the roof, which could be 2400, for example. So now I can take this extrusion that I made and drop it between these two. Now I want to make sure that when we place this doesn't shift up and down. So I can annotate it, and I can get this reference. Oops, let's try that again. And I can lock it in place so that it doesn't move. Locked, so it won't shift up and down if someone tries to. Whatever level you place it on, it'll stay there. If we go back to here, this is the interesting one. If we click on this dimension and we click instance parameter, it'll then give us the ability to change this in the model without having to go back into our family and re-edit it. So let's load that into our project. We'll quickly just save it. So I'll put it in, this is just a folder for the live stream. So we'll do that. And now you can see it's allowing us to be placed in our model. And I'm going to place it in our kitchen over here. Click that button there. So if we go to our 3D view and we just come around the corner here, that's our little object up there, if you can see. But what if we want to make this longer? So the great thing about an instance parameter is that we don't have to go back to that family to make it longer. We can just drag this. This dimension, by being an instance, allows us to change it in here. So this width here, we can input. We can make that 2000 if we want, and it'll change. See, it's just got a little bit longer. We can make it 4000 for some reason. That would be really stupid, but that's okay. You can still do that. And then we can shift that across. And then if we go to our 3D view, you can see that's gotten longer. So you can make your own custom casework. You can, if you download them from the internet and they're really well made, they have instance parameters so you can play around with them. And that just helps with the editing process to make things a lot quicker. So those are families. And then the last thing I want to look at is annotations and shortcuts, because shortcuts are really great in Revit, and they make things go super duper quickly. So I'm just going to quickly open my other file. So this is an assignment we did recently for fabrications, and I want to show you this wall section that I took. So have a look at this. You can see that there's a lot of detail and different hatches in here, insulation, and a lot of different annotations. But all of this wasn't built in Revit. If I go to the 3D view, have a look, it's empty. There's nothing there. So all I did was literally just make a drawing in Revit with annotations. So if we go back to this wall section, there's a lot that you can do in annotations. So if we go to the Annotate tab, firstly, we have all our dimensions. So aligned is great. You can pick, multiple points and drag those out, and you can do running dimensions all the way down. And there's different types. So say I wanted to see what the angle was in this roof, you can pick, let's see. Oh, we don't have anything we can draw on because we don't have any lines. So for example, if we had a line, look at this, you have all these different lines that you can choose from. So I'll just do a line there. And then if we change that type, change the thickness, we can do a dashed line, different types of dots, medium lines, thin lines, all those different stuff. Regions, you can have a masking region, which basically masks stuff out and covers it up with white. And with these masking regions, you can also change the type of line. So if I want that to be invisible, and look at that, there's no border. Or I can do a filled region, which is what all of these are. So this is a filled region, and I've specified it to be wood. There's other types. You can have an ortho crosshatch, or you can have it just be grey. That's just grey. Or you can have it to be dark woods. Now these are hatches that I've imported as well. And I can't remember what that website is, but it'll come to me soon. Diagonal down. So basically all I did was just create a whole bunch of regions just like this and different hatches, and I was able to draw a detailed drawing to scale. And then obviously then I placed that on my sheet. So if you see this sheet over here, and I changed the scale so it would fit. These here are images. So this was made in Rhino, and all I did was I went insert image, and I didn't put that on a view, I put that on this sheet itself. And then on the sheet, you can still do an annotation. So if you have a look, we can go Annotate Text, and you have different choices up here. So either you can just do a text box floating in space, or you can add a single arrow. So it does an arrow and then you type. Or you can do a leader line where you have that. Or you can have a curved arrow like that. But typically those aren't used quite as often. So yeah, and it's basically, just imagine in Revit, it's like you're doing everything by hand digitally on a computer in terms of annotations. If you were to make a drawing, right, you draw a line there. And so now I want to show you a few different shortcuts that really, really help out. So we'll just go to this wall plan quickly. So say I have a line here, and I've just got, you can't see. So let's, that's quite loud. So let's change that to, there you go, that's nice and thick. Oh, and the reason you can't see that as well, because my crop region was cropping it all out. So let's make that a bit bigger. Yeah, there's that line. On pen 8 pen, there you go. So we've got some lines that we're drawing, right? Say I want to move this one over. The shortcut for move, MV. And when I click MV, so I just typed the letter M, the letter V, and now I've got a point that I can move it from. MV, same thing. Now, if you notice, this line is attached to these lines automatically. So when I move it, it's going to pull this along with it, which is quite cool. Say I want to copy this line, the shortcut is CO, CO, and now when I move it, it copies over. One thing you have to be careful about with the shortcuts is that you have to click on the thing that you want to affect before you click the shortcut. So otherwise it doesn't really work. So if I click CO and then I click this line, it has a bit of a hard time reading what I want to do. So I have to click the line, then CO shortcut, and then I can move that over. An align dimension has a shortcut DI. So if I want to do that quickly, I can see that. So that's quite cool. So that was DI. Oh, I do like this one. So say you've got some intricate shape that's going on, and I want to mirror that. So I can highlight multiple, so I hold Control to select multiple elements, and I MM, and then I can mirror that over there. Or say I wanted to mirror it on a different axis, I can do DM, and I can choose the axis that I want to mirror it on. So there was a weird axis that I mirrored on DM. Well, what else? Offset. Offset's a great one. So when we draw our lines, we can always choose these shapes too. So we can draw with a circle, we can draw one of these, and say I want to offset it by a certain amount, click the circle, OF. I choose how much I want it to be by, so maybe 20. Let's make that about 100. And I can choose, if I just move my cursor slightly, which side I want that offset to be in. And there you go. It offsets it. And for offset, I also don't have to click it before. I can, as you can see, I've typed offset once. I haven't clicked it again, but as I hover over a line, it'll give me the option to do that, which is quite good. But yeah, and you can see it. But okay, so this is the thing. I'm just going to quickly delete these. If I click offset once, I've clicked. Whoops, clicked up. Okay, sorry about that. I've clicked offset. Now, if you click multiple lines, you can see they automatically trim each other, right? But if I exit the offset and I go back into offset again, you can see how it crosses over. But these ones don't. So in the same action, essentially, it'll do those things where it connects and trims. But if you redo your shortcut again, it won't do that. In order to fix these, I press TR for trim, and I click what I want to keep. So it's great. I click what I want to keep. Say I want, I have these two lines here, right? I'm just going to quickly separate this. Say I want to, connect these two in that right angle. I can click TR and look at that. It's also an extend tool. So trim and extend are kind of one and the same. It'll trim that off. It'll do all sorts of things. So it's quite clever there. So I want to keep this and keep this, right? Or I want to keep the inside there. And you can see that was joined, so it'll give you a little bit of an error about what it's doing. But yeah, all these shortcuts are really, really fantastic. If you want to scale, of course, it's RE for resize. So RE, and then you can scale that accordingly, which is quite cool. And then yeah, there's all sorts of tools. I would recommend just looking up the shortcuts, writing down which ones you think you'll use often, because it really does speed up your workflow a lot. They are very, very. You typed in the website. That's fantastic. Revit City, Emerging National Library. Yeah, they're all there. So yeah, that's the shortcut. And then lastly, I just want to show the possibility of doing some funky modeling in Revit too. So if we have a look, we go back to this model. I'll just use this space as an example here. So for example, you can model in place mass. Say you want to make a wall that's curved in a bit of a weird way. You can choose wall here, and it gives you these tools again. So you remember that extrusion that we did before, we can do that. But I'm going to show you an example, this sweep blend, which is quite an interesting tool. So let's go to level 1. Let's sketch a path. So I'm just going to guide you through this. So we're going to do a bit of an arc here. There we go. So we've got an arc. So this wall is going to curve like this. Okay. Click the tick. However, it's going to get taller. So one side, this pink side is going to be taller, and this red side is going to be shorter. So we're going to select profile 1. And in order to draw, we have to go to an elevation view. So I believe it's west. Yes, that's right. We're going to edit a profile, and you can see this is the point that we're working on. So we're going to make a nice tall wall over here. Cool. Now we're going to select profile 2, but this elevation is going to be the south elevation. So we're going to edit the profile, and we're going to pick that point and make it a bit shorter. So now before we actually make this, we can go into 3D and check it'll work. So as you can see, I've outlined each end and the path that it's going to take. So let's see if this will work. We'll click the tick, and there you go. Look at that wall. So we've got this curved wall that's doing this fancy little, you know, thing over here. It's quite cool. And so if you guys just explore, and you can give that a texture and a material later on, if you guys just explore that in-place modeling with the walls, and you can do this with masses too, but in a slightly different way. All these different tools over here, they can be quite interesting to be able to model interesting shapes and, you know, put voids. You can put a void in a wall. So for example, if we want this wall to have a boundary that we want to open, so let's go to our south. And I've done the same thing that I did before, unfortunately. I did it wrong. But yeah, you probably won't use many of those tools very often, but at least you know that they're there. You can explore them. A lot of learning from Revit comes from just tutorials and YouTube. If you don't know how to do something, this is my go-to tip. Always just Google how to. If you create a curved wall like that, how do you connect a roof to it? Yeah, so that would be pretty interesting and tricky, wouldn't it? You'd have to be able to model a roof in a weird shape too. So with roofs, a way that you can model them, if we go to architecture and roof by extrusion, who said there had to be a roof? Exactly. You could just have a wall. But roof by extrusion. And so if you have a look, we have to be in, I'll do that again in a, let's go to LS view. So here we go. So roof by extrusion. We have to pick a plane. Okay, so we're going to pick this as our plane, and it's going to extrude out of that plane. So now we're going to draw the roof shape. So this is a great tool up here to use as well, this little green thing, and it means that you can pick lines that already exist. So we're going to pick that. There we go. And if we go into 3D, it's a little bit funky, but can you see how it has taken that curved shape? So let's just go, where is it? I think it's level 2. Not quite sure, but we need to fix the view extent. So if we click on that, look, we can drag this. So that kind of works, yeah? Like you can see how we've fitted it to that curve. So that's another way that you can make roofs per extrusion, and you can do really interesting shapes on a plane and then pull it out. Like this could have been made in extrusion, right? Like, so if you went to this plane here and then pulled it out. But yeah, Revit's a very powerful tool, guys. I would highly recommend using it if you're not already. Start learning it, because it's very likely that firms will want you to have experience in using Revit anyway. So yeah, if anyone, we're probably going to wrap up soon, but if anyone has any other questions or things in particular that they'd like me to show them, please comment in the general discussions chat. I see a few people typing, so I'll let them finish those up. But otherwise, yeah, if you haven't already, just remember to sign in for us. I think most of you have already, so that's fantastic. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Let us know what you guys think. Wrong one, hang on. So for first year, we're technically allowed to use Revit for Studio 2. Yeah, for Studio 2, you can use Revit, but I would not recommend it. There is a huge learning curve, and you probably don't want to be using most of your time in Studio learning how to use Revit. Also, if you want to do, like, crazy shapes, it is harder to do in Revit. It takes a lot of time. For example, I had a coworker who did a spiral staircase, beautiful, beautiful spiral staircase, but it took like weeks and weeks and weeks to model up. So it can be quite hard if you want to do something a bit more crazy. But I mean, by all means, if you feel confident enough, then go ahead. In year 2, you do a BIM course, and this is the list of videos that they have. So they have weekly tutorials, step by step, how to use Revit. So you can see setting true north, doing the topography, preparing the site, floor slabs and footings, external walls and grids, curtain walls. So that they literally go through everything with you. It's a really great course that you guys will do. In terms of the tutorials, lectures are one thing, but the tutorials are fantastic. So you will learn it in year 2. Hopefully that doesn't change, like communications did for you guys, unfortunately. But I mean, especially with the shadows that I showed you guys, if you can still import like an object file into Revit, CAD file, and like do your shadows in here, I much prefer it over other programs just because they're so crisp. But yeah, and the earliest studios are the best places to start, but yeah, you do get taught in year 2. Yeah, I mean, look, definitely go ahead and give it a shot. But there is a bit of a learning curve, so it's up to you guys. But it is a good point, I think, maybe to learn it in BIM first and be more familiar with it, then go on to use it afterwards. I would recommend that, but it is up to you guys. Does anybody else have any other questions? Any other comments before we wrap up? So next week, I'll also let you guys know we are going to be having, oh Lord, is it Photoshop? I think it's Photoshop. We're going to be having a live stream on Photoshop.
Photoshop, and then InDesign, which will be run by Natalie and I.
Ivy, do you want to just give them a quick overview of what you're going to include in your Photoshop tutorial?
So Natalie will be running mainly the Photoshop, and I'll be doing InDesign, but we'll be just going through like really basic stuff. Renders and how you extract like line weights from SketchUp and Rhino and Revit, and then that's how you like make it pretty. Basically, yeah, Revit and InDesign is like how you make it pretty and present it to your tutor so that they understand their things in Design Studio. Yeah, we'll be getting through the basics, so don't worry about it too much just yet.
Yeah, guys, you're in for a treat. We've got some Photoshop masks, believe me.
Yeah, we're the media directors for ArchSoc, so we're the ones doing like the posters and stuff. So
exactly.
Hopefully you guys learn a lot from that too next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Cool. So there's a few more people typing. I'll let you guys finish up what you're typing. If anyone has any other comments or questions, type those now. We'll wait a couple minutes. Otherwise, yeah, we're finished the tutorial for today. I hope that was enlightening for seen before. So you got a taste of what it's like. It's very likely this what you will be doing in a few years' time once you graduate. It's not that scary. It's a really, really, really powerful tool. Like even I only just scratched the surface of it. There's really so much you can do. Sometimes it's infuriating, other times amazing. You'll learn to love it. You will learn to love it, but it's great. So yeah, guys, keep using the Discord. We have, as you can see, these voice channels 1 to 5. So if you just want a space to hop on with your friends, if you're getting lonely and you want to work together, feel free to use those. They're open 24/7 and they're for all of you guys to use. Tell your friends. So we'll be doing these live streams every week. It's possible that this will be posted onto YouTube channel for later reference for you guys as well. We still need to just work that out and confirm that. But yeah, otherwise, guys, that's it. I'm gonna stop the live stream now. Hope you guys all are going well with all of your projects. Wish you all luck. Thanks for coming on. Thank you all for signing in for us as well. Make sure to do that too. If you haven't, just go to that sign in and put your names and ID and username. But yeah, that's it, guys. Have a good night.